Technology.
And it's better.
Yeah, that's a lot better.
That's a
At
little
least you
better
don't have that
there.
big glare.
Yeah.
There you go. Very good. Very good. Okay, so Tim, you're with us tonight. Margie and Nancy. It's not Margot, it's Nancy. And then Tim was helping a neighbor last week, and so he didn't get to come to class last week, but he watched the recording and he told me that he was even answering the questions. So he felt like he was there. And then Ophelia had to go to work tonight, and so she's not here, so I'm recording for her. And then Patricia, I haven't heard again from Patricia, so I'm not sure whether she's here, but otherwise I'll just record for her as well. Okay, so everybody ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, so you succeeded in doing your homework, all three of you all, which is wonderful. Congratulations. I pat you on the back for that one. You did your homework in a short period of time. And I heard from a couple of you all that, well, you know, that was a challenge. So any comments on the homework?
Well, it was a challenge at first. The first couple of settings were out of range. And so my camera kept, you know, trying to get me to change the f-stop. And I thought it was me instead of the camera. So yeah, it was a little frustrating at first.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a couple of them where you can't balance your light meter if the light's not perfect, obviously.
Right.
Especially the shutter speed. Anybody else?
At the very end, I got curious, actually, after I'd already downloaded everything. I read something in our notes that said that if you can't get a high enough shutter speed, then you can increase your ISO. And so then I got curious and I wanted to try that, but of course the weather wouldn't allow me to do that today. So
Okay. So a good example of that is today, this morning, I taught a hummingbird photography class, and one of the first rain bands came through, and so it dropped all the light, and it was rainy, and we were under a porch on top of that. And so the only way to get anywhere near 250 or 500th of a second shutter speed was to raise the ISO. So, you know, we were in a situation where we wanted to photograph, but the only way to do it was to raise the ISO. So that's where that comes in.
and did you have to raise it quite a bit?
What's
Yeah, we
the
did.
trade? What
We
is
did.
sorry.
Go ahead.
What's the trade-off when you do raise the ISO? I raised mine by mistake. And so I'm wondering how that changed things.
So it degrades the quality of the image.
Okay.
And then the worse the light is, like today, rainy, overcast, dreary, then the worse high ISO looks. If we were in bright sunlight and we had clear air and everything was absolutely lovely, then we could raise the ISO and not notice it as much. And it also is your personal tolerance, because each one of your cameras, like Tim's and Nancy's camera, is going to handle high ISO better than Margie's camera.
Gotcha.
Because you all are working with a higher end camera and a more modern camera. A couple of years ago, before I went mirrorless, I traded two perfectly good cameras in simply because the newer cameras handled ISO better. So it's your personal tolerance. But if I want the picture, I want the picture, and I'm going to raise the ISO.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay, so let's look at homework assignments. So Margie, this is your 1/5 of a second shutter speed, and you see you've got your water shooting up in the air, and you notice that you've also got your blurred water coming off the little bird bath down there. So shutter speed, where everything, because you're on a stool or a tripod, everything's nice and solid, looks fine, except anything that's moving. And then you did your exercise really well, Margie, because here's your 1/4 of a second and your exposure's still the same. And then here's your 1/8 of a second and your exposure's still the same. And then here, once you get to a 15th of a second, we can finally see a bit of blurring or a bit more solid in the water. And we're seeing some more bubbles in here. But otherwise your exposure is still the same. So that means you're balancing your light meter. And then here you are at a 30th of a second. And notice now we can see the splashes up in here. And we can see the splashes down in here. And once again, you haven't lost your exposure yet. And then here's the 60th of a second. And now we're actually getting little bits and pieces of water in this area. So you did absolutely right. 1/25th of a second. And then everything's starting to become not bubbles, but drops, nice solid drops. And you notice now that you didn't have enough light to go to 1/25th. So we finally got just a little bit darker. And then here you tried it at 250, but we just didn't have enough light to let you go to 250.
Right.
But at this point, you've got good splashes going on right down in there. So you did everything exactly right. Pass that assignment.
Well, good. Thank you.
And then here you are on your f-stop, and you can see at 4.5, the background is a little soft, not totally blurry, but a little soft. And then it goes 5.6, it gets a little clearer, and 7.1, a little clearer, and the fence gets clearer at 8, much, much clearer at 22. So you balanced all the way through that one as well. Now, why you didn't notice your fence blurring out more is because you were too far away from your subject.
Gotcha.
So if you would have been closer to your subject, you would have noticed that fence getting much, much blurrier. So the closer you are to your subject and the further your background is away from you, the more you're going to be able to blow it out of focus. But otherwise, you did a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, good job. And Nancy, you did a fabulous job with this because you're pretty close to these flowers at f4.5. And it looks like you're focused right here on the flowers. You notice you have a little bit of focus area right over here as well. So it looks like the plane of focus is just right back in there, not on the front flowers, but kind of back in here. But notice how pure that background is. So that background, because it's so far away, you remember how far away it was?
It was 5.5 feet.
5.5 feet. Okay. So you've got that, you've got a pretty good distance back there. And then here you kind of readjusted at 5.6 and brought your focus back to the front flowers.
Right.
And then 7.1, I think you'd redone that one, that other one I just showed. But here you are now focused on these front flowers, just like you should be. And then 7.1 and then 8. But it's nice because now front flower plus the back flower is in focus at f8. And remember that old saying, F8 and be there, because most stuff's in focus at F8. So this is kind of a good example of that. And then here you went on, and then you F16, starting to see that background just a little bit more. And then F29, we've got the background in there. So you did a great job, and you didn't lose your exposures throughout the whole thing.
Okay.
And then here you did the water. So 15th of a second, you had a bright sunshiny day for this one.
Right.
So you were able to go through the whole thing. 15th of a second, and you see how the fountain itself is blurry. Everything else is nice and crisp. Even the little waves right down in here are kind of crisp, even at a 15th of a second. And then here's your 30th of a second. And then here's your 6th of a second. Notice now the water jets are starting to get real solid at 60th of a second. And you're keeping your exposure in there. 1/25th of a second, we're starting to break everything up into blobs of water. And then 2/50th of a second, look, you've got these sprays of water up there. And 2/50th of a second. And then I don't think you went to a 500th of a second, but it's kind of interesting to see that we're in that, solid shoots of water coming up. So you did a good job. Good job.
All right. Well,
Yay.
I found out my tripod's not any good. It would not keep it level.
Yeah.
So I have kind of cattywampus.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it held it pretty steady though, but it definitely wasn't getting as level as you
Yeah,
wanted.
it's not too level, is it?
Yeah, yeah, that's that Me Photo Globetrotter. Remember that. That's a good
Yeah.
tripod. So you did a good job. Congratulations on that. And then Tim, we just got these in. We just loaded them. So I don't have any f-stop or shutter speed on them. And so here you've got that really nice blown out background back there. So you did a really good job. You started out at 4.5, Tim?
Mhm.
Yeah. So we've got, nice blown out background in the back. And then here it's coming a little bit more into focus, little bit more into focus, little bit more, I think. Yeah, there, that plant back there is coming into more focus. And now we're definitely coming into focus back here. And lost a little bit of exposure. I like your darker pictures better than your lighter pictures.
Yeah, the sun was kind of coming in and
Yeah.
out.
Coming in and out. Yeah. And notice how those leaves in the background now, we're starting to see those a lot more. And then this one looks like it's maybe slightly out of order, maybe. There you
Maybe,
go.
I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Or it could have been too, just that the wind was moving a little bit. Oh, we got a human being back there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
My wife was playing in the garden.
Yeah, who's a little bit on the blurred side. So this could be that maybe a little bit of wind picked up on that background. So you did a good job on that one. And then here's your water faucet. And you had the same issue that one of the numbers that I gave you, you just didn't have enough light to do that.
Yeah.
But this should be maybe 200 or 500. Do you remember, Tim?
It was 250, but I couldn't get the meter to balance.
Okay.
I couldn't get enough light in with my
Yeah,
lens.
not enough light. But you can see if you look in there that we've got drops of water coming down here. And so it's doing just what it should do at shutter speed. It's dropping that water. And then here we go back into the 250. So this would be 125,
Yeah.
right? And then the
250.
water's starting to blur just a little bit down in there. And then here's the next one, much more blurred water, and then getting that balanced light meter real good. And then the water's blurring a little bit more down in here. And see, now the water is just a nice solid spray coming down in there. And then here you've got even more spray coming down. And then the water coming out of the hose is just a nice solid movement now. And then really blurred down in here, blurring that water. But still, everything else is nice and solid. So you did a good job on that one and keeping the exposure in there too. There you go. So that help you all
Yes,
with f-stop and shutter speed?
Yes, a lot.
it made it make sense.
Yay, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Yeah. Yeah. And thank you very much for doing it. I know it's not easy because, you got to go out there and you got to get it all set up and all that stuff and then upload the photos. But just thank you very much for doing that. I really do appreciate it. So any questions for me about your homework before we go on to tonight? No?
All good.
Okay,
The only
good.
thing, well, I guess it's not really a question, so I'm good.
You're good.
Yeah, I'm good.
So this was a leftover question from a previous class. So I just left it in. This auto ISO, if you set your camera for auto ISO, what happens is that it balances the light meter with whatever shutter speed you left and whatever f-stop you left. And then all it's doing now is raising and lowering the ISO. So your light meter never moves if you change your f-stop or change your shutter speed. So it's just raising and lowering your ISO. That's what that is. And there's times when I use auto ISO, and if you come back into some other classes, I'll explain when, but I tend not to like it to use auto ISO because the ISO gets higher than I think it needs to be. And so then all of a sudden I don't realize it, but I'm shooting at ISO 2500 and there's no reason for me to be that high. So that's why I don't like shooting on auto ISO. And then neither one of you all have that plus minus button. So we're okay on that one. But this is where Tim and Nancy on your cameras, no, that doesn't even apply to you all. So I'm not even gonna say it. It might cloud things up, okay?
Yes,
Yeah,
true.
might mess up the slate, okay. So on the back of your cameras, Nancy, did you encounter anything on the back of your camera that I need to explain a little bit more?
The only thing that was bothering me was that sometimes I could not get the screen to come up that had, you know, all the information on it.
Uh-huh.
I would press menu and then it wouldn't do anything. And then I'd press menu 3 times and I'd get the leveler, but I wouldn't get sometimes I would have to turn off the camera completely and then turn it back on and then I could get it.
It should be press the info button 3 times.
Okay. And
That's what it should be.
Either I was probably too impatient. I'll just admit that one. And maybe that was my problem. I was pressing too many times.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll try
Or
that.
maybe pushing the menu button instead of the info
First,
button.
right.
Mhm.
I could have
Yeah.
pressed menu first and then info 3
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the camera doesn't know what in the heck you want.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I figured it was kind of user error.
Remind me again what the lock button does. It locks your exposure when?
It locks this back dial right here.
Oh, it locks the back
It
dial.
locks the back dial. And you all, now that you know how to use your cameras, do not want to lock your back dial because it has so many functions to it. And if you lock it, then it locks you out of a whole lot of functions on their camera. So that's why you don't want to lock it.
Okay.
And then, you know, make sure that you don't accidentally lock it. And then, Margie, any questions on anything on the back of your camera?
No. I think I got it figured out. It took me a while to find the light meter thing, but mine actually looks like a asterisk instead of a I. But other than that, I got it figured out.
You got it figured out? Okay,
Yep.
good, good. I'm going to go back to this real quick because she just mentioned something. You see this little asterisk right here?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then Margie, yours has an asterisk right here, right here. See
Well,
that?
actually, mine is on the back of the camera.
Yeah.
Don't
Don't
kind
push
of
the,
where, yeah, it's down on the back.
okay, don't push the
Mine's
asterisk.
a little bit different than that
Than this one?
screen.
Okay. Don't push the asterisk button. If you push the asterisk button, you have to turn the camera off and on.
Okay,
If the asterisk button is when you'll see an asterisk show up inside the viewfinder, and that
Uh-huh.
is where you have locked all the settings.
oh, so it was just, I thought it would bring the light meter up on my screen when I couldn't get it to come up. So that's what I thought it was for.
Yeah, no. So that's a good one for you all. Just don't push that asterisk button, because if you push the asterisk and the asterisk shows up in the viewfinder, then you have to literally turn the camera on and off to be able
To
to
get it back.
rebalance the light meter. Mhm.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We got that. That's on yours. Okay. And then Ophelia, I'm just showing
What's
you the
that
back.
button right there that arrow's pointing at right now?
That's where that's on Ophelia's camera, and that's
Uh-huh.
where she moves her focus point. So
Okay.
she starts her
Because-
focus point. You all have the exact same button. That's where you push it so you can move your focus points around.
Gotcha. I have a button like that on the back of mine
Yeah.
too.
And remember, we
Okay.
talked about that last time. That's where
Yes.
you push it, and
Yes.
now you can move them around, but then it'll turn off. So it'll only stay on for about 20 seconds.
Yes, everything goes too fast for
Yes.
me. I move slow.
You'll get faster. There you are. This is the back of your camera, right?
Yes, that's
Margie?
it.
Yeah. So here's your
Very-
asterisk. Don't
Very
push
close,
that.
right?
And so this is what the back of your camera is looking like. Yeah. Okay. And 77D, any questions about top of the camera?
I don't think so.
No, you're good on that one? Okay,
I
super.
hope so.
Okay. Okay. So now I get to talk about the camera settings on the top of your camera. Now,
Okay.
why I have you in the M mode, why I have you in the manual mode is because by rotating the f-stop and rotating the shutter speed and pushing the button and rotating the dial and doing whatever you have to do to change your f-stop and shutter speed, you are physically doing this. So it's a little like the Montessori method of education because you're actually pushing something and rolling something, and you're actually physically making a hand gesture to make that change. And so I want you to stay in the manual mode until you start feeling comfortable explaining to yourself why you chose this f-stop and why you chose this shutter speed. But you've also figured out that manual mode takes a long time. By the time you dial in your f-stop, dial in your shutter speed, the sun's gone down. So, you know, and the water quit running out of the hose or whatever. So you don't want to stay in manual mode all the time. It's a very slow way to shoot, but there are some ways that we can shoot just a little bit faster. So you've got your camera with you, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then turn it on, and in the manual mode, I want you to be on f5.6. Once again, that magic f5.6 that we used last week, simply because everybody can get 5.6. And now, instead of being on the M mode up on the top of your camera, I want you to rotate the dial to the AV mode. This is aperture value for Canon users. If we had any Nikons or Sonys in here, it would be the A mode, but you all are all AV. Now I want you to look through the viewfinder and point your camera around the room and simply raise your shutter up, your shutter button up and down, and just, you know, depress your shutter button halfway down. Point your camera at the ceiling light, point your camera at the window. Are you noticing that your light meter is right in the middle?
Yeah.
Right.
You see that?
Mhm.
Yes.
But the shutter speed changes.
But the shutter
numbers
speed's
all change.
changing. Exactly. So what aperture priority is doing is you set the shutter speed. The camera sets the, you set the f-stop. The camera sets the shutter speed for you, and it balances your light meter. And so when you're in aperture priority mode, this is when you know what f-stop you need. And then the camera is going to balance your light meter for you. Now, everybody's light meter is right in the middle, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, but you know, my f-stop changed to 25.
You must have done that.
I didn't, and now I can't get it to change off.
Yeah, but you rotate your front dial now. So Tim and Nancy, your front dial now controls your f-stop,
Okay.
not your back dial. And Margie, your
Oh,
front
you know
dial
what?
now,
You're right. Mine did too.
yours
Yours
did
changed
too.
too?
Yes, but you know what? I controlled mine with the back too.
But now you don't push and hold your plus minus button, Margie, and Tim and Nancy, you don't rotate your back dial.
Right.
So
right, 'cause
now
it didn't do anything.
it's the front dial is called the command dial now. And so
Oh,
it's now in charge of your f-stop.
gotcha.
And then the camera takes care of your shutter speed accordingly. So
Gotcha.
point your camera down at the floor and you'll see that you get a slow shutter speed.
Yep.
Point your camera up at the light and you'll see you get a fast shutter speed. See that?
Okay, yes, I see.
Yeah, yeah. So you see that it's balancing the light meter for you.
Gotcha.
But you have to set the f-stop with the front dial, not the back.
Yes, you got to remember that now you're setting the f-stop with the front dial. Exactly. So
Mine
why
says-
we would, yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Mine says flicker inside the screen when I push.
Yeah,
the button. What does that
yeah.
mean?
It's just trying to tell you that it's a little dark where we are, and you might see a little bit of a flickering going on. Okay. Why you would use aperture priority? I shoot in aperture priority almost 100% of the time. So in aperture priority, if I were doing a field of bluebonnets, I would set it on f/22 and the camera on a tripod. And now I could walk all over the bluebonnet field and do grand landscapes of the bluebonnet field. But then when I wanted to do portraits of those little bluebonnets, then I would set my f-stop on 5.6. And now I could just crawl all over that field and just photograph portraits at f5.6. But if I noticed that some of those little bluebonnets were swaying in the breeze, then I still have to watch my shutter speed, because if the shutter speed's not fast enough to stop the little bluebonnet from swaying in the field, then I'm not going to get a crisp, clear picture of that bluebonnet. So you can, it's a little like you think you're getting away with, without having to think about things, but you still have to pay attention to that shutter speed because it's too slow if you're not careful. Okay.
So it doesn't automatically pick up on that movement itself and change.
You are the only one that knows that, you and your brain. Okay. So in another place that I use aperture priority is I use this with my birds or any kind of action. So what I do with my birds or any kind of action is I determine what kind of f-stop I need. So I might do like an f8 to make sure that there's enough light coming through that aperture. Now I have to watch my shutter speed as we were doing today with those hummingbirds. If that shutter speed's not high enough, then I raise my ISO. And Margot and Tim, notice that your ISO button is in the front of the camera, right in front of your command dial. And
Right.
It has a little indentation in it so that you can feel it without taking your eye off the camera. Okay. And then Margie, you notice that yours is on the back, so you can punch it.
Actually, no, mine is on
No?
top.
Yours is on top. Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
this is a brand new camera from last year, and I think it's kind of different.
Well, you said it was a 3i?
No, it's a Rebel SL. It's a EOS Rebel SL3.
SL3. I'm sorry. I thought that was an I, and that was
No,
that was the SI3.
SL3.
Okay, that's
So
why I
no,
keep-
my ISO is on
Okay.
the top, right
I was on
behind
the
the
top.
dial.
Good. So if you need to, if that shutter speed's not fast enough while you've got your eye up against your viewfinder, you just reach over, push your ISO button, rotate your back dial because it's going to be your back dial. And then it enables you to increase your ISO to increase your shutter speed.
So
Okay.
you press the ISO button, but to move it, you have to move.
You have to rotate the dial.
back dial.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think, double check, don't do it now, but it should be everybody's front dial. I just said back dial, but it's not. It's everybody's front dial.
Okay.
Yeah, it's everybody's front dial.
Change
Okay.
ISO.
I do
So-
it on both dials.
Press
Pardon?
ISO.
Both dials do it on mine for ISO.
That's okay. And you can always program it, Tim and Nancy, in your
Mhm.
cameras to be a dial that makes sense to you.
Okay.
So you can always program that. So aperture priority is when you know what f-stop you need, and then you're willing to see what shutter speed the camera is giving you. And if that's not fast enough, then you're going to raise your ISO.
Got it.
Most sports photographers that I know shoot aperture priority. So they set their f-stop based on what they need for the action that's just about to happen. If the shutter speed's not fast enough, then they raise their ISO. And then when they need to bring their ISO back down, then they lower their ISO. So
Okay.
that's aperture priority. And then you've got shutter priority, which is TV. So rotate your dial to shutter priority, TV, timed value.
That's what that stands for.
That's the TV up on the top. And now I want you to look through your viewfinder and rotate that front dial and go to 60. Because now your front dial is controlling your shutter speed. And when you go to 60, are you getting the f-stop blinking at you?
Yeah.
Am I what?
when you go to 60th of a second shutter speed in TV, are you getting your f-stop blinking at you?
Yes.
Yeah. Nancy?
I'm working on getting 60. Okay, yes, it's blinking.
Good. Okay. So in shutter priority, this is when you set the shutter speed and then the camera decides whether or not it can take the picture. Now, it will let you take the picture. Go ahead and take the picture. It is not going to prevent you at all.
Oh,
But the
yeah.
f-stop blinking at you is
There's
trying to
nothing there.
warn your brain that I don't have enough light. I'll use 60 if you want me to, but I don't have enough light. I got a problem and I'm trying to get your attention and I'm trying to tell you that something is wrong. And so shutter priority is when you know that you've got a certain shutter speed you want to use, and then you can decide whether or not you want that f-stop to blink at you, or once again, do you need to raise the ISO so that we can get a higher f-stop to balance the light meter. So looking through your viewfinder, rotate your shutter speed dial, that's now your front dial, until your f-stop quits blinking. And what number do you get when your f-stop quits blinking?
I got dot 4.
Fourth. Good. Now take a
Oops,
picture.
I'm going the wrong way.
Take the picture.
Yep, I got something.
Got something, exactly. What shutter speed do you get when the f-stop quits blinking at you?
4.
Fourth, take the picture. What'd you get, Tim?
3 seconds and something.
3 seconds, or was it 0.3 and something?
It's 3 quotations 2.
3 quotations, so 3.2 seconds, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you take the picture, the light looks like it does in the room, right? It's
Right.
blurry, but the light looks like it does.
Yeah.
Mine
Yeah.
was 5 dot dot.
Okay, so that would have been a
5
fifth of a second, right? Yeah,
Yes.
so a long shutter speed.
Yes,
So
I
when
had to
you're
hold it for a long time.
Yes. when you're in shutter priority, this is when you know what shutter speed you need, and then the camera sets the f-stop for you. Okay, so put your camera down, because in a little bit I'm going to show you when we're going to use that. So just leave everything set like it is right now. But if you look up on the top of your camera, you have some other settings up there. And I don't want you to rotate any dials or anything like that, but I want to tell you why we will not use these settings. And I want you to not use them right now. So you've got this lady with some hair, or a lady
Right.
with big hair, or a lady with a hat, or
Okay.
something like that, depending on what the camera is. And this is the portrait mode. And the portrait mode, if you think about it, is simply going to put you at about 60th of a second, and it's going to blur your background. And how do you blur your background?
Wide aperture.
Wide aperture, exactly. So what f-stop would you use if you wanted to blur your background?
Low.
Yeah, so what number would you use?
4.5.
4.5, exactly. So that's all that the lady with the big hair does, is it just simply puts you at about a 4.5, about a 60th of a second, and balances the light meter probably with your ISO. Don't make any changes. I don't want y'all to do that right now.
Right.
The landscape mode puts you at F22 or 32. Okay, that's all that the landscape mode does, but you all already know how to do that. You can go in aperture priority, set your f-stop at 22 or 32, monitor your shutter speed, or put your camera on a tripod. Y'all know how to do that one.
Right.
And then the tulip mode is simply just what it's called the macro mode. But the
Close up.
macro mode, once again, is just blurring out your background. That's all that that's doing. And then there is nothing magical about the tulip mode in letting you focus any closer. If you look on the barrel of your lens, you will see that it designates on your lens how close you can focus. You will see something like 1 meter or 0.9 feet. You see on the probably around the back of the barrel of the lens. What'd you see, Margie?
0.8 feet.
0.8 feet, exactly. You see it, Tim and Mark and Nancy?
I think
Yeah,
mine
well-
is 1.3 feet. or
1.3
0.39
feet.
meters.
Good. Yeah.
Same thing. Yeah.
Same thing. Okay, that's the closest your lens can focus. And there is nothing in the macro mode that is going to let you focus any closer than that.
Gotcha.
So it's just, once again, just kind of a little hokey mode. And then the little runny man, the little action guy, that's just taking you into aperture priority, like I just explained, opening your aperture up as wide as it can get so you can get a maximum amount of light coming through. That gives you your fastest shutter speed. And then it probably also raises the ISO. And so that's what those what I call the little hokey modes do. But you all know how to do those things now, right?
Right.
Right.
Now, Margie, on your Rebel, do something for me. Move to the green box. Don't you all,
Okay.
don't you two do this, but I just want Margie to do this on her Rebel.
Yes.
Did you go to the green box?
Yes.
Okay, now go to the back of the camera and push the menu button. And
Okay.
Nancy and Tim, pay attention. How many menus do you have that go across the top?
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
5 menus, right? Now go
Right.
back to the manual mode for me.
Oh, go back to manual?
Yeah,
Okay.
go back to manual.
Okay,
Push the menu button. And how many menus do you have?
the same.
5 menus?
Uh-huh.
Seriously, when you're in the M mode?
I have shooting settings, playback settings, wireless settings, function
Right.
settings,
But don't
display
you
level
have,
settings.
but don't you have about 11 little tabs going across the top?
No, that's not the way mine's divided
That's
up.
not the way yours is.
No,
Okay,
it's got these different level settings and then you have to drop into each one.
okay, okay.
So if I
okay.
go to the first one,
That's okay. You don't need to explain. It's all right.
okay,
In the old Rebels, if you, Margie, you can go back to the TV mode if you would,
Okay.
okay? In the old Rebels, if you shot with the green box mode, you got access to 5 menus on the back of your camera.
oh,
But if you shot in the manual aperture priority, shutter priority mode, you got 11 menus on the back of your camera. So what happened if a Rebel user shot in the green box mode, which is the first thing that they introduce you to in your camera manual, then you lost 6 menus full of information that
Ah.
you paid for. So the same thing happens if you go into the program mode, don't do it. The same thing happens if you go into any of those automated modes, is that they assume you don't know what you're doing. And so they deactivate a whole bunch of features that you paid for. So that's
So
why.
if- is it only deactivated when you're in that mode? It comes back or does,
Mhm.
okay, gotcha.
So that's why I always want you to shoot in manual aperture priority or shutter priority. Now, Tim was asking me about the CA mode. And once again, don't turn to that right now. This is where you can set this up for a pre-programmed mode. So if there's something you do all the time and you want to be able to get to it really quickly, that's what you two can set up in that CA mode.
I got
Okay.
I've
Okay.
got 2 other things on the top of mine. One says SCN.
Uh-huh.
What is that?
It all depends on what happens when you go in there. So I have no idea. I'd have to
Okay,
read the
okay.
manual
And then
for
the
it.
other one looks kind of like the sun and eclipse.
That's
maybe?
what this, you're seeing the same thing on the top here on Nancy's camera.
right.
Yeah. And then once again, we'd have to go into that to see what they do. Because each
Yes,
one of the
I don't
camera.
have the tulips or any of that.
Okay. So
I
each
just
one
have
of,
that.
yeah, each one of the
gotcha.
cameras has things, and now you can read the manual and understand what it's talking
Right.
about. Okay.
No problem. Thanks.
Yeah. So I don't want you to, I want you to stay on manual for a while,
Gotcha.
but I want you to eventually progress to aperture priority. And it might turn out you like manual so much that you never leave it. I had one student this morning who has never left manual. It just fits her brain. She likes it. She's fast. That's okay. So that's just, those are just some of the things you can do. And then that's your 80 on that one. Okay, some features though that I definitely want you to keep set on your camera, and here's why. So if you look on the back of your camera, you have AI servo, and you're in that big display panel, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, why I want you to stay on AI servo is that when you autofocus on a subject in AI Servo, if you keep the shutter button halfway down, you're not taking a picture, you're just holding it halfway down, then wherever your focus point is, will constantly keep focusing. So if your subject gently moves, or if you gently move, your camera will keep refocusing, and you'll actually hear the lens keep refocusing. If you moved it, don't move it, but if you moved it to one shot, which is one of your alternatives, then the camera focuses on one point in space, wherever you focus the first time. And then if your subject moves or you moved, it doesn't follow your subject. It just stays on that point in space. One shot will also not let you take the picture unless the camera thinks you're in focus. AI Servo lets you take the picture whether the camera thinks you're in focus or not, because sometimes there's just a time when we want to take the picture and we don't care whether we're in focus or not. And so that's why I want you to stay on AI Servo. Okay. Also on the back of your camera, you've got this 3 pieces of paper on top of each other. Margie, you should have a little display for that 3 pieces of paper.
Yes.
And Tim and Nancy, it's your drive. And that's where you've got the 3 pieces of paper with an H.
I
or
don't
your
have an
release
H, I
note.
just have the 3 pieces of paper,
Okay.
but that's the
Yeah.
same thing?
That's the
Okay.
same thing, right?
Good.
But
And we're
Tim,
supposed to have that on the back of our LCD?
you have on your when you have your info panel up.
Yeah,
Yep.
not
got-
seeing
you-
it.
Do you have just a square by itself?
If it's right beside the AI Servo, I have 3 squares. And one is a rectangle with a little square in the middle.
Uh-huh.
And then I have another one with a circle in the middle. And then I have one that's just by itself.
Okay, now remember the one with the circle in the middle is your light meter. So put your Q button on and go over to that one that's just a square. Tim, do you see the 3 pieces of paper, the 3 squares on top of each other, or do you just see one square?
I see 3 with an H.
Good,
Or
3
that's
with
what
an
I
H,
said
good.
too.
Okay,
Good.
mine says now set up single or continuous shooting.
Correct. I want you to go to the 3 pieces of paper now.
Okay,
And then Tim's got his,
okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
Okay.
With the H?
Well, wait a second.
Oh, sorry.
What the 3 pieces of paper means
Mhm.
is that as long as you hold the button down, the camera will keep firing. So
Okay.
click, 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 click. If you go to the 3 pieces of paper with an H, Nancy and Tim have that on your camera, then this is the fastest your camera can fire. So you will now get 7 frames per second or 8 frames per second, depending on how fast your camera can fire. So that 3 pieces of paper with the H is the fastest you can go.
Gotcha.
So today, working on those hummingbirds, once again, we got a couple of them that were flying in a regular pattern. So we were trying to follow them. And that's when we wanted to go on the 3 pieces of paper with the H.
Gotcha.
So the 3 pieces of paper plain will fire about 3 frames a second to 5 frames a second. The 3 pieces of paper with an H, depending on your camera, Tim and Nancy, will fire 7 frames a second to 8 or 9 frames a second. So I wouldn't leave it on 3 pieces of paper unless you knew that you were going to do that. Otherwise, you're going to get 5 pictures of everything.
Okay,
Right.
gotcha.
And that gets boring and the editing gets hard with that.
Okay,
And then also remember where you pushed your focus button over on the far right hand side on the back to change your focus points. I usually shoot with just one focus point activated. And then I use my toggle. Nancy, Margie, you've got those 4 little toggles on the back of your camera. Tim and Margot, Nancy.
right,
That
sorry.
daughter's name is throwing me off.
I know.
That's okay. You all have the little joystick. Plus, to move your focus point, your back dial moves it horizontal and your front dial moves it vertical. So then you can move it diagonally with that little joystick on the back of your camera.
Joystick.
What are you calling a joystick?
What's it doing?
This little, oh, y'all don't, they took the joystick. away.
Ah, I
Oh, right
see.
here. See right
Oh, in
here?
the middle of the,
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
doesn't turn anymore, yeah.
So
Yeah.
most of the time you want that focus point in the middle?
Most of the time you want it in the middle. But then, you know, to change your composition, we move it off to the side. So, you know, it depends on where your subject is and what you want your composition to look like. Okay. And by the way, we had a little photographer that I didn't know who photographed a wedding in the family. And when they were so proud of their pictures and they displayed them all, she used the focus point in the middle for every single picture, which after a while is really, really boring. Okay. So we don't want that. So these are some things that I've got set for you already on that handout that I gave you the first night. And these are some things that are good for you. And this is explaining to you why we've got them set.
Okay.
Now I would like you to pop your flash up. And
okay,
Ophelia, this is what your flash looks like when it's popped up. There you go. So just to talk to her for a little bit. Okay, everybody got your flash popped up?
no, how do you
No.
do that?
There's a little lightning bolt in the front of the camera, face the camera towards you, and over on the right-hand side, there's a little lightning bolt. Right up on top. Mhm. It should be for you, for you, Nancy, it should be right up in this area right here where my cursor is.
Well, unless it's in black,
It might be in black.
you got 4 little dots,
Should be on the front of the camera.
and maybe that's it.
Tim, where's yours? Front of the
It's on
camera?
the camera body.
Yeah.
and facing the lens.
Uh-huh.
It's on the right-hand side, just below Canon.
Yeah.
The white lightning bolt. The button's black, but the lightning bolt's white.
Yeah. It's a little lightning bolt button.
Interesting.
Should be in the front there.
I'm looking in the front, I've got 2 black buttons. One looks like a lightning bolt, but nothing happens when I press it.
Well, make sure your shutter button has been pushed halfway down because your camera's gone to sleep.
Oh, maybe that's it.
Now push the lightning bolt button. Yay!
That was it.
Okay, okay. Because when it goes to sleep, a lot of things just don't work anymore. Okay, now 60th of a second, you're on shutter priority, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, now by punching the flash up,
Yes.
this is a TTNL flash, through the lens metering flash. This
Okay.
flash has been told now, wherever you focus, it's been told to send light to that spot based on how much your light meter is balanced or not balanced. So you're at 60th of a second right now, correct? And we know that your light meter is not balanced. Turn around and photograph a lamp or a statue or something like that. Just turn around and photograph something in your room.
Okay, 60th of a second is,
60.
okay, on the shutter speed, right?
Yep, exactly.
So I am
Shutter
not
priority.
there.
And so now that's where I left you last time. So now when just turn around, take a couple of pictures around your room, see what they look like. That bobcat behind you, Tim.
Okay.
Yeah,
If I set mine at 60th, I'm still flashing.
I'm
That's
still
okay.
flashing too.
that's okay. I don't care if you're flashing or not.
Okay.
And if I have a little arrow lightning thingy in my viewfinder, my flash is on.
Your flash is on, exactly.
Okay.
Now, if you notice, it's not overexposing anything, right?
Mhm.
It's doing a halfway decent job.
Yeah,
Right.
it is.
Okay, if I were walking around a party at my house and, you know, the light's like it is right now in the house, we know we don't have enough light. If I
Right.
were walking around at a party at my house, I could set my shutter speed to 60th of a second, shutter priority. Remember, 60th of a second stops a human from just looking at you. I could pop that flash up, and now I could walk around and just take pictures of people with my flash. And my shutter speed is fast enough to make people stop, but my light meter is not balanced. So this is one situation when I do use shutter priority at 60th of a second. And then the flash is set to TTNL, that top mounted flash. It will go about 8 or 10 feet. It's not a super powerful flash, but it'll go about 8 or 10 feet. If you want to buy a top mounted flash, your top mounted flash would be your Canon 430EX or EX3, whichever one you would like to buy. This flash is much more powerful and a lot smarter. So it actually knows a little bit more about how well your light meter is balanced. So if you look at this photograph of the young lady, look down in the lower left corner and you'll see that the statue is casting a pretty good shadow on the ground. That tells you that we've probably got some shadows on her face, but you can't tell that I used the Canon 430EX to get rid of those shadows on her face. So the flash is very smart. I focused on her face. It knows to send light there and turn off.
Interesting.
So that flash is a really, really nice gadget to have. So your pop-up flash will do you a pretty good job. It's not bad, but the 430EX2 or 3 is going to do you a real good job. If you can get a 430EX2, I think it's better than the 430EX3, but that's just depends on what you can get on the market right now. So in this little situation right here, I use the flash on this little guy also, but once again, you can't tell that I use the flash on him. And you notice how I've positioned him so that he's behind all of those party lights. So if you position your subject so that those party lights are 10, 15 feet away, then that's lighting up my background. And now I can use the flash to light up his face and I get that balance between the two of them. If it's darker, so in this case with this genet in Africa, this looks like a cat, but it's really a mongoose. And it's called a genet, and they come out at night in the restaurant where we stay when we're in Tanzania, or we eat when we're in Tanzania, and it looks for rodents up in the thatched of the roof. But you know, this is one cool animal. I'm going to photograph this if we can, but we don't have enough light, so we can use 1/60th of a second, put that flash on, focus on the genet. And in this case, because I'm using that shutter priority at 1/60th of a second, then I don't care whether the background comes lit up or not. So in this case, this is a 1/60th of a second. I'm in a fairly dark environment like we are right now in our rooms. And then I let the flash light the cat up or the genet up. Okay, so these are instances when I use 1/60th of a second. Also, I would use that 1/60th of a second shutter priority in this instance. So we're outside, it's dark, we know it's dark, but if I position my subject so that she's up against that lighted display behind her, 1/60th of a second is going to stop her, the flash is going to light her up, and then those party lights, or in this case, the lights on the trees along the boulevard, are going to show up behind her. So this is instances when we would use 1/60th of a second, when we know we don't have enough light, but we're going to use the flash to fill in our subjects. Shutter priority. Where we're going to use the flash also is when we can balance our light meter. And so here I am up at the Amarillo Cadillac Ranch up in Amarillo. And when I was working on the Back Roads of Texas book that my husband Gary wrote, and I was doing all the photos for it, we didn't always have the opportunity to be someplace at the right time. We were at a place when we were at a place and we had to make it work. And just like it is when we're traveling sometimes. So this is snowing. It's overcast. The wind is blowing like crazy. It's horribly uncomfortable. And I can't figure out how in the world I'm going to make these stupid cars look good. So these people walked up with this really nice looking dog. I asked them if they could pose the dog for me. They said, sure. And the nice thing about the top mounted flash, not the ones you all have pop up, but the top mounted, is the head swivels on it. So I swiveled the head over to the side, focused on the dog, with my focus point over on the side. And so now that my focus point is over at the side and the flash is over at the side, the flash nose go there. So when the flash fired, this is aperture priority, when the flash fired, the overspray of the flash lit up all the metallic paint in the cars. And that's sometimes what happens with flashes is you just get some cool stuff that happens. And so from there on, I just flashed these cars like crazy, and it made them look like it was a great day, even though it was horrible. So sometimes that flash is just a really, really nice tool to have. So remember, your top mounted flash only goes forward. Excuse me, pop-up flash only goes forward, but your top mounted flash, we can rotate from side to side. There's another way that we can add light to pictures, and this is called a reflector. So I'll show you a picture of it in just a second, but it's a 24-inch disc. You buy it from Amazon, and the 24 inches works just fine. It's a round disc, one side silver, one side's gold. And when you twist it, it folds up into a little bitty ball or a little bitty flat disc, and you put it in its case and you slip it in your camera bag and you forget about it until you need it. With this picture of this young lady, I've got the reflector in the lower left and the window is in the upper right. The light from the window is coming across, hitting the reflector, and the reflector is bouncing back up the light up on her face. She is very pink complected, so we used the silver. So that bounced a silver light back up on her face. The reflector is a nice way to photograph women because it doesn't accentuate our wrinkles like the flash would. The flash would accentuate our wrinkles. And this is what the reflector looks like. It's just a 5-in-1 reflector, cost about $24 from Amazon. And it has a center disc in it that's called a diffuser. You can hold it between your subject and the sun to diffuse the light. Then you can put the silver or gold on, and then you just flip it around for the other color. But it's a great, great gadget. In your homework assignment for lesson 2, which I won't see you after when you do your homework assignment, but if you don't have a reflector, I'm going to ask you to use aluminum foil on a piece of cardboard or the windshield screen in your car to reflect the light up on you. So you can just try either one of those and you can see whether you like the reflector. I do a lot of garden photography and I love the reflector on flowers. Very, very soft, and I can angle it like I want so that I get the shadows like I want on the flowers. And you see in this photograph of the young lady, as we're progressing through the day, the sun is getting very intense. But the photo over on the right, there's a reflector behind her leaning up against a wall that's reflecting the sunlight back on her. So you see how that reflector can really, really cut the light, soften the light.
Mhm.
Yeah. So good gadget. So the next concept I want to introduce to you is called flat to the film plane. Now, film plane, that's an old word from the film days, but what it really means is that depth of field is measured, not measured, but depth of field begins from wherever the film was or the sensor is today. And your depth of field is absolutely parallel to that film plane or that sensor. So if you tilt your camera down, your depth of field goes down. If you tilt your camera around, your depth of field goes around. So your area in focus, your depth of field is absolutely parallel to the back of your camera. To get all of the drops on this calla lily in focus, I made sure that the back of my camera was absolutely parallel to those water drops on the calla lily. And you notice that the interior of the calla lily is out of focus. See, it fell out of its depth of field. So you can see it also in this butterfly, the Cockerel Butterfly Center. I've gotten the camera absolutely parallel to both wings, snout, antennas, stick. And that way I can maximize that shallow 4.5 f-stop without anything falling out of focus. So it's called flat to the film plane. Shows how it works with a caiman down in Brazil. I'm looking straight down his snout, and this is an f8, and I'm focused on the front of his snout. But you notice that f8 with my 400 millimeter lens doesn't even go halfway down his snout. So his eyes are out of focus at f8. But if I pull the boat up beside the caiman and still use f8, now I get him all in focus. So you see how flat to the film plane helps us to get our subjects in focus. Make sense?
I think so.
Good, good, good. You're going to play with it on your homework assignment, see how you do. And then I mentioned several times getting your tripod, and this is the tripod I think you should own. This is a MePhoto Globetrotter classic carbon fiber. When MePhoto contacted me about 5 or 6 years ago, they asked me to review this little tripod. And I told them I only use heavy, expensive tripods. I don't use light, inexpensive tripods. And I should have bought stock in this company because I don't know how many of these that I have sold to my students. This tripod is super sturdy. It weighs 3 pounds. And when it folds up completely, it folds up to 1.5 feet long. So when I travel, this is the last thing in my suitcase. It goes on top of my clothes. So when TSA opens up the suitcase to see what's in there, they're going to see the tripod right on the top. It's not adding any weight or significantly any weight to my suitcase. So, and this tripod, the neat thing about it too, is it's got a ball head on top of it. It comes with that. It comes with right up here. This is called your base plate and your attachment. This is the gold standard in photography. It's called Arca Swiss. So this base plate right here, my cursor won't circle it. My base plate right there, you Allen wrench this onto the bottom of your camera. And if you have more than one camera, you Allen wrench one to the bottom of every camera. And now your base plates just live on your camera. And then when you buy a long lens, or if you have a long lens, like a 100 to 400, you put one of these on the tripod foot as well. And then the nice thing about this tripod base plate is it doesn't come loose. And so it just sticks to the bottom of your camera. You Allen wrench it on, and now your tripod, your camera is nice and steady on your tripod. This extends to a little taller than I am. I'm about 5'5". So it extends to a little bit taller than I am. And then you put the camera on top of that. So this can extend to a little bit more than my height once I put the camera on top of it. So it's more than high enough for me, and most people can do it. We don't want to raise the center column because that's the weakest part. But so in most cases, unless you're super tall, it's going to extend all the way to your height, or at least plausible, passable for what you need. So, and nice thing about this tripod also, you can buy it at Best Buy as well as your Amazon and B&H camera. And it comes in all different kinds of colors. It comes in red, where the silver is, it'll be red. It comes in green, it comes in blue. It comes in orange, it comes in pink, it comes in yellow. And so it's got a whole variety of different colors that it comes in. So you can kind of individualize your tripod for your personality. Questions on tripods? No? Okay, good.
And then the same problem Nancy did. Mine's really lightweight when I went to use it.
And it just doesn't hold.
I'm afraid it's going to fall over with my camera.
Okay.
Exactly, exactly. And you don't want it to fall over. So get yourself a MePhoto Globetrotter. So they're good. And then lenses are tools. You heard me say in first class that we use our lens for a specific purpose, not because a friend said we need it, but we use it for a specific purpose. This is your super wide angle lens. So for all of you all, this would be your 10 to 22 millimeter lens. This is the lens that we would use for grand landscapes, big, wide landscapes, or even large rooms like museums or something like that. If you look at a scene and you move your head from side to side and up and down to take in the whole vista, That's what a 10 millimeter lens does. So that's that wide field of view that you would get with a 10 millimeter lens. And then also with a 10 millimeter lens, we can tilt it up to accentuate the sky as I did here, or we can tilt the camera down to accentuate the foreground. So this storm was really impressive, but by simply raising the camera at a different angle, moving the camera at a different angle, throwing the top of the lens back, it made that storm cloud much more exaggerated and made that storm cloud much more ominous than it was. The neat thing, yeah, go ahead.
It's just a 10 millimeter?
No, it's a 10 to 22.
10 to 20.
10 to
Okay.
22, yes.
Okay, got it.
And then the same thing here, I can put it down into the bluebonnet field. It focuses really close. And then I can get the sky plus the whole bluebonnet field. So this is this wide angle lens that we use for night photography. We use it for grand landscapes. This is a great travel lens for big stuff. We wouldn't use it with people because it's going to exaggerate and everybody's going to put on 10 or 15 pounds. So, you know, this one's really used more for grand landscapes. And then here it is just a little gift that I created. This is every lens I could get my hands on one day, going
Oh,
to
wow.
500 millimeters back to 10 millimeters, and then going through. So you see that each lens has its own place that it brings them in. But when we go all the way to the 500, you can start seeing that building down there. But watch when we go to 10, you can't even see it. So that 10 millimeter will make things that are a long way off look further off. And then your 500 brings it right into focus. So you see that each one of them has something different.
Yeah,
If you ever think that you're going to buy a lens,
right.
feel free to email me and ask me whether I think this is a good choice or not. I would rather see you buy the right lens the first time than have to buy a lens again.
Yeah.
So if you're ever shopping for a lens or a trip is coming up and you want to know what kind of lens to buy, then consider emailing me. Okay. Yeah.
I'll
If
do
we
it.
ever get to travel again, right?
Tomorrow,
Tomorrow, where are you going?
just Pittsburgh.
Oh, Pittsburgh. Okay. Also consider renting a lens. We have 3
Oh.
companies here in Houston where you can rent a lens. We also have a company called Borrow a Lens, which will ship the lens wherever you're going, and it'll meet you there, and you could ship it so that you don't have to transport it. And a lot of people do that when we're traveling someplace where we need a big lens, because then they don't have to fly with it. So if you ever think that you're going to buy a new camera or you're going to buy a new lens, consider renting one, because that might turn out to be the best
That's
way
a
for you
great
to
idea.
see whether you really need it or not.
Good.
And let me show you just what we mean by bokeh and why lenses have different purposes. The blurred out background is called bokeh. And you saw that when you all did your homework assignments. You saw what kind of blurred out background that you get, you can get with your lens. This is that 18 to 55. Margie, I think you have one of these, don't you? 18 to 55?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, okay. So this is her 18 to 55 millimeter lens. I went ahead and zoomed out to 55. I'm going to try to keep that consistent. And this is an f4. And this is just a little bauble put into the window of my office. And I'm looking out of my window of my office up on the 2nd floor. And what's back there behind that?
Trees.
Trees, yeah.
Yeah, your
And
garden.
you see how soft it is, and you can even see the screen of the window. You can see that in there. But watch what happens when I go to a 50 millimeter lens f4. This is 50 millimeters f4. So this is a lens specifically designed to give you that beautiful blown out background. This is the lens I used to photograph my cat, where just the nose was in focus. Remember that from the other day? So you see the difference in the quality of the blurry background between the 18 to 55 and the 50 millimeter lens. 50 millimeter lens, this is what it's designed for. But then the 70 to 200 millimeter lens, look at the quality of that background. So now you can't tell anything of what that is. And that's also at an f4. And once again, this is what this lens is known for, is these beautiful pure backgrounds, this really, really nice clarity to the background, or clarity of the blurriness of the background, not clarity of the background. So you see that between each one of those different lenses, it just depends on what the clarity of that blown out background is. So each lens is designed for a specific purpose. It's got a specific mechanism to it. And depending on what you're looking for, that's, you know, the lens you should buy, not simply because somebody says that you need that lens.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I've got for you all tonight. Questions?
No,
I think that covers everything I understand so far. Okay.
That you can
I'll have
handle
to
so
play
far,
a little
right?
bit more.
Okay, now you've still got a homework assignment. Obviously, I'm not going to see you again unless you come back for
Right.
another class, but you've still got that homework assignment to help you work through a bit of this stuff.
okay.
Do you
Questions?
send out, when you're having classes, send out advertisements every so often?
I do, I
Like you
do.
did? Okay.
And if you didn't, when you signed up for class, if you didn't say sign up for my newsletter, then go back to my website and click sign up for my newsletter, because a newsletter just went out the other day. And new classes on my website right now, it's coming up next week. This is Introduction to your Lightroom, Adobe Camera Raw, or Elements. This is to your processing programs. I'm an advocate of the Adobe programs. And this is just an introduction to get you started. And then there are 11 YouTube videos that I've created to help you out, to fill in the blanks, because it does take a while to learn these. But the Adobe products are what you need. For anybody have them already?
I have Adobe Photo Elements 15.
Uh-huh.
That I think it was before they did the Lightroom, maybe?
It could be.
I don't know.
It could be. And it's the baby.
But
Yeah. And if you,
yes.
yeah, and you subscribe to the Adobe products and you get Lightroom, Adobe Camera Raw, and Elements, and then you can use whichever ones you want.
Yeah, and mine I was before you subscribed. It was right before, so I bought it.
Yeah.
It's not a subscription.
Okay. And so it's
So
like,
it's
to-
old.
it's like totally outdated. Yeah. They've come up with so many cool things. Yeah.
Yes,
Yes. Yes.
but it's free.
I know it's free, but you know,
I don't
you
have to pay a month.
Yeah,
Fee.
yeah. And then landscape photography is coming up in October. Bird photography is coming up in October. And what you do when you come back with my classes is you've already got the basic vocabulary. We're already speaking the same language. And now I'm just going to add some more stuff to it. So whether you really have a keen interest in landscapes or birds, at least you're going to learn something new. So come on back. And then I have a
Right.
series of what are called master classes. And these are 4 classes in a row over a 4-week period of time with homework assignments. And coming up is night photography and textures. And then in January, we'll do flowers and macro. So hopefully by that time, you'll feel up to speed with maybe coming and taking a master's class. But I do 23 classes in all. If there's any classes on the list that I'm not offering right now that you want, email me and I'll put them on calendar for you.
Okay.
Right.
And then if you want to
And one
travel,
other question I had is,
yes. Go, Tim.
I was just gonna say that my camera can do video as well. So when it's set on video, it has nothing to do with the camera or anything else, right?
Nope. No,
No,
No.
okay.
you can
There's no
still set
Special
your,
settings for video.
no, there's no special settings for video. I mean, there are, but for us, no, they're not. But things like you can set the f-stop so you can get some nice blown out backgrounds on your video settings. Yeah.
Okay.
And then coming up for travel, Costa Rica's coming up in November. We've got one opening for a female willing to take a roommate. And then the February Costa Rica trip has got plenty of openings right now. And the wonderful thing that I like about Costa Rica right now is that these people know how to handle COVID and they got it under control. So it's absolutely an amazing country to
good.
travel in. Yeah. And it's safe and you can drink the water. So, you know, it's good. It's a good country.
Nice.
And then here's all my contact
Margie-
information. Yeah. What were you going to
Okay.
say, Nancy?
I was just gonna say that Margie and I do want to do some travel. with
Ah,
you,
yeah.
so.
Yes, we do. We'll probably start with, you know, the hill country or something and
Okay.
then expand to maybe out of the country.
Yeah, because I've got 4 weekend workshops next year and the Hill Country. They're all on my website. One for Big Bend. So check
Good.
my website because it's got my schedule on it now.
I
Okay.
love Big Bend. That
Oh,
would be really
it's
neat
beautiful.
too.
It's beautiful.
But we're headed to the Smoky Mountains in a couple of weeks and we're gonna try what we learned.
Good.
Mm.
Good. Put that camera on a tripod and do
So
those
at the
blurry
bottom of your
waterfalls.
handout,
Yes. Go ahead, Tim.
Oh, we've got a lot of waterfalls we're going to see, so we can practice that water thing.
Yes.
that's cool. So at the bottom of your handout, it says Houston photo teacher at Comcast. That's
Yeah.
different than,
It is. It is.
that
It's just one of
change?
it's one of my other emails. Yeah. Yeah. So either one will get to me. They all come to me. And then my blog has a lot of information just on silly things like landscape photography, hummingbird photography, whatever. And then if you're on Facebook, I'm at Kathy Adams Clark. Come like me, I'll like you back. That way we can share pictures with each other and keep in touch with each other. If you're on Instagram, I'm at Kathy Adams Clark on Instagram. Okay, questions?
a lot of information.
No,
It is. It is. Practice, do your homework, and then I will see you hopefully in another class someday soon. Okay. Okay, I'm going to stop
Yeah.
sharing and I'm
Yes.
going to turn off the recording. Where's the recording? Stop the recording.